Let's kick off with this from Niall on YouTube. If the deal gets done, this is transfer window month, obviously. If the deal gets done, what can Manchester City fans expect from their prospective new signing, Omar Marmoush?
Well, they're getting one of the most informed forward players in Europe, for starters. I'm sensing from Niall's question that this is a bit more long-term. But to briefly summarise what's got Marmoush to this point, he's been in the Bundesliga for a while. He was at Wolfsburg before. He was at Eintracht Frankfurt. The potential was clear, but as they are so good at doing, Eintracht have unlocked that to spectacular effect. Now, he's played mainly up until this season as a wide forward, cutting in, and he's still got that about him. He's still got that creative edge to him. But he's often played as a striker this season, and that has made a massive difference because he's got into more central positions. He's got unbelievable close control. He's a very inventive finisher, score with both feet from inside and outside the box, and as we said, a great creator, and he's really fast, which was why he was originally a wide player, because he can run the channels. He can just knock a ball past a player and then just absolutely tear past them. So he's scored at nearly a goal a game so far this season. Ton of assists as well. He's the only player, I think our good friend Archie Rintut said to me earlier this season, he's the only player who I can think of that Bayern have really struggled to cope with so far this season, because Bayern always have a problem at Eintracht Frankfurt. They've taken a couple of real batterings there. They've lost like 5-1 twice there in the last 5 seasons, and it went there this season, dominated the entire game. Like, they were brilliant, and they didn't win. They drew because Marmoush just took the relatively little chance he had and scored a couple, and he was incredible. And I remember seeing it, but last time I saw him in the flesh was when Eintracht Frankfurt played away at Lyon in the Europa League. And similarly, they were getting hammered. They were really under the pump. And he came in and scored a goal to bring them back into the game. And it was barely even a chance that he made into a goal, really. It shows his invention, the wit he's got, and how difficult it is to stop him. Now, I guess the plus for Manchester City is if they were to get him in, not only does he remove the obligation to play Erling Haaland all the time, but you think he can play with Erling Haaland as well.
That's where that's how I thought he actually might be used to help Haaland, who obviously his goal record is still absolutely fantastic, but who you do feel has perhaps hit a bit of a wall in terms of what more he can bring to the team, and he perhaps needs that foil. So is Marmoush going to be trying to bring something that perhaps Julian Alvarez lacked or didn't bring Man City? And that's
just a bit more explosive, Marmoush, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's what they perhaps need, because City have been very plodding, very ponderous at times, and they do need that spark from somewhere, whether it be from somebody cutting in from a wide area.
That's the question.
And it'll be interesting to see. But it's good for them to have that flexibility of somebody who they could say, okay, we can play him alongside Haaland.
But where? From the side, from the wing, or does he stand
gives them options.
Behind,
I think it gives them options. But I like the idea of him playing them, and I know it doesn't happen much these days in football. I like the idea of them playing a 2 and Marmoush just playing off.
It would
Haaland.
be mad though, wouldn't it, Andy, for him, given what you said about how he's moved in more centrally from the wing, that Manchester City wouldn't buy him for that reason, to be there where he's most effective, or has been more effective in the Bundesliga of recent times.
Well, we can only second guess that. And Alvarez always gave City the option of going into a 2. I think that's what you're getting at, really, isn't it?
Exactly.
And I think that's what they need, that flexibility. And actually, I wanted to ask you, David, is if I had a football club, I would definitely have you as my recruiter. So looking at what Manchester City are trying to do this month, it's something we talked about on the Ramble earlier in the week. There's this assumption that the thing they need to do in January is go out and replace Rodri. Whereas they're not really they're seemingly not really looking at that. They're looking at getting legs in the team, because you talked about that plod. I think it's quite interesting. You know, they're close on Kuzanov at the time of recording from Lens. They're looking at Victor Reis from Brazil. And Marmoush, who, as we said, is one of the most electrifying players in Europe this season. That seemed to be Guardiola's take on where they're really lacking.
I think so. I think they lack a bit of dynamism. There's a lot of teams kind of just run over them at the moment through pure physical prowess, their speed, sharpness. I think they're really lacking it. I'm not particularly surprised that they haven't gone for somebody to replace Rodri. I think the attack is where they've found themselves wanting. I think if you look at the players that they brought in, Man City, where some of them currently are right now, then it is a bit of a concern for a team that does, Foden's been out of form. Grealish just isn't in the picture at all. Doku is hit or miss. Bernardo isn't at the level he is capable of. So they need a freshening up there. They need a brightness there, and I think they hope that that Marmoush can do that.
At 60 million, though, that's what he's expected to cost.
He'll cost more.
60.
Yeah,
he'll end up costing more, because Eintracht are under no real pressure to sell him this month, and I think what's even better for them in terms of what they want to do and what is actually realistic, since Marmoush has reportedly agreed terms with Manchester City, he's carried on as if nothing's happened. He's still playing brilliantly. So whatever happens, if he gets to go or if he doesn't get to go, he's going to carry on playing like he's playing. So, they're not going to be held to ransom over this. And Eintracht Frankfurt, as we've talked about it on here before, very, very good at selling players for high prices in recent years.
And staying with the January transfer window, from Andros on email, what can we expect from Kvaratskhelia at Paris Saint-Germain? Khvicha Kvaratskhelia, who was at Napoli, of course, was being touted to leave for PSG last season, at the end of last season, but then he didn't go, did he?
Yeah, Antonio Conte wanted him to stay. He didn't want Osimhen and Kvaratskhelia to leave in the same summer. And it's funny, even though Conte has talked publicly about, this is my fault that I haven't convinced him to stay and all the rest of it, it does feel, before we get on to Andros's question and what he can bring, that it feels like the right time for everyone. If you look at his numbers, not just the big numbers like the goals and the assists, but the underlying ones in terms of like take-ons and stuff like that, he's not performing, and the eye test, he's not performing at anywhere near like the level that he was when they won the league in 2022-23, when he just burst onto the scene in Italy. Or even the level he was at during the Euros in the summer. He was amazing, wasn't it? Maybe. I mean, I think it feels as if like he's been good this season, but he's not the most important player at Napoli. They can do without him, even if they weren't to bring someone in this month. And of course, they've been linked with Garnacho, Eden Zhigrova, a variety of different wide players, Federico Chiesa on loan. I think with the squad they've got, they are still absolute contenders this season. And they've kind of got to get rid of him now. Because not only is there the sense that maybe as that surprise factor's gone, his value has dropped off a little bit. Of course, there's the question of his contract. He's one of the 4 worst paid players in the senior squad at Napoli because they've not changed his contract since he arrived. And when it's become clear that he wasn't going to sign an extension, that they had to let him go. But before we get into what he might do at PSG, David, are you surprised that they've gone for a wide player and not a centre forward?
Really surprised. I think their best player at the moment is a left winger, and that's Bradley Barcola. So this feels a bit like old PSG, just seeing a shiny new toy, a big name. I think they've been missing a big name, a star name at a major signing for quite some time, and I feel that they've maybe, been twiddling their thumbs and then seeing this opportunity come up. I really thought they would have gone for a number 9. I think there are several out there. I mean, you look at the money they're going to play Kvara. Yeah, they just would have been better off going that direction. I'm not too sure if that's a position of need for them right now, and I'm again concerned that how this impacts Barkla and his development, who is coming along really, really nicely.
So Barkla has showed the capacity to score more goals this season. I guess the question is, do they either play Barkla in that central role going forward, or do they, as happened on occasion at Napoli, particularly in the back half of last season, there's Kvaratskhelia play in the central role and there's some sort of swap over? I mean, I could, if they were going to move Barkla inside, I could understand that. But on the other hand, I think part of his ability to score comes from him starting on that position out on the left, and he's using his pace to get past players and then cutting in onto the to the right, which kind of is Kvaratskhelia's mode as well. I guess it's funny because I don't think we have to look at front lines now as right. You have to have a big guy in the middle and 2 more mobile players outside. I don't think it has to be like that. But it's not an obvious fit, is it?
No, I don't think it is, and I'm always worried about. I always get worried about bringing players who are used to being in wide areas as a central figure. PSG don't play a lot of teams who are open as well, and I'm thinking about how compact it is going to be in the middle, in the central areas, and how much Kvara is going to get to do the thing that he does best, and that is stretch defences and run at people. How much is he going to get to do that? So it makes me leads me to believe that, you know, Barkla maybe might be played through the middle to accommodate Kvara. You'd expect so, I guess, if they've spent that much money on him. But yeah, it confuses me. Obviously, I don't think Gyökeres was available in January anyway, and if he was, it would have been for an absolutely ridiculous fee. I thought he was the one that would have made sense for them in terms of signing.
Did PSG need to make the Godfather move now, though? Because, I mean, for me, it seems unrealistic to say that they're going to win the Champions League this season. We know they're going to win Ligue 1. Might they have been better, like, just waiting till summer and getting that centre forward?
I would have waited until the summer, seen how the market pans out, who becomes available, because you don't know about Osimhen's future as well, who's another one. Yeah. So I would have waited personally.
Yeah, 70 million is what's been touted for Kvaratskhelia.
I mean, it's still a big profit for Napoli. It's not as much as they'd have got if they'd have sold him like a year ago.
Yeah, that was about 100 million was being touted.
Much more.
It's kind of mad in reflection.
Yeah, it is. But I think even if they weren't able to sell him at his absolute peak, they're still getting several times what they bought him for, having got a lot of good value out of it, and the market being what it is, I think it's not that bad.
This from Ralph on X. What has happened to the Champions League winning Naby Keïta? Remember him? I've just seen that he's gone off on loan to Ferencváros in Hungary. Is that really his level now?
Well, the immediate answer, Ralph, is we don't know, because it's been a long time since he's played any football. Now, of course, he arrived at Liverpool with a great reputation, a deserved great reputation for how he'd played at Leipzig. Was clearly held back by injuries at Liverpool. And I think the feeling is he was taking a significant step down in going to Werder Bremen. It was a real surprise that Werder were able to get him. Obviously, they're not one of the best teams in Germany now, and they haven't been for a very long time. But the sense was he would just get there and be able to play. But again, he's been held back by injuries. And there came a point, really, last season where, you know, they'd had to get on without him because he wasn't available. That they had a game where they had a lot of injuries, and they said, right, we need everyone in the squad. The coach, Ole Werner, said, we need everyone in the squad. And Keïta was in it. And then when he was told he wasn't in the starting lineup, he said, right, okay, well, I'm going home then. And off he went. And from that point, they've sought to dump him. Now, look, he's been quite sort of punchy coming back in in public and saying, look, that's not the way it happened. I was just frustrated. I just want to play, and that's not exactly how it happened. I think he felt like a promise to him had been broken. Obviously, you can understand the frustration of him not being able to play after waiting for so long to play. On the other hand, I think Werder's public stance at, well, we can't put up with this, therefore we're going to find a solution for him. It's just their way of like trying to get rid of an onerous contract that's dragging them down. Obviously, he's not getting paid as much as he was at Liverpool, but he's getting paid a lot for Werder Bremen. If he's not playing and they feel he's not going to play regularly and he's not part of their plans, that's a huge problem for them. So I do think maybe it's slightly suited them to dismantle his reputation in public in order to just like wash their hands of the responsibility of paying him. So look, obviously this is a level down again. Whatever the level at this point, he just needs to play. We know he's a good player. Can his body stand up to regular football? That's got to be the next question. And hopefully this is a stepping stone for him to get a move back to one of Europe's bigger leagues, because look, we know if he's playing regularly, he's got it.
It's quite fascinating to see somebody's decline as fast as his rise.
I mean, so quick.
It's remarkable, isn't it? Yeah, because he's declined as quick as he rose. And you look at that time at Liverpool where he was so beset with injuries there that it was impossible for him to kind of get that consistency, get the grips with the actual league. And I mean, I think it was in the same. I think he opened the scoring against Man United. I think Liverpool beat Man United 4 or 5-0. I remember him opening the scoring in that, and then 12 months later he was gone, and then that was it. And it was quite. And he came with a lot of fanfare as well, and again very highly rated. The Liverpool's got another product here from that from the football school, and you'd expect him to be a success. And I think it was a time as well when Liverpool needed a midfielder as well, or several midfielders. They were in part of a transition period then as well, so the opportunity was there for him, but it just never happened.
I think that's the thing. Like at Leipzig, he had such a high ceiling because he could do everything. He was a guy who could play box to box. He could play defensive midfielder. They played him at centre back when they needed to. He could play as a number 10. Like it's so much ability and so versatile and incredibly intelligent to grasp what was needed for him in lots of different roles. Most players cannot do that. So that he was unable to manifest that at Liverpool was a really big disappointment for him as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's one thing to talk about the players that teams have got their eyes on during this transfer period, but it's even as fascinating, I suppose, to look at the players that aren't being considered by clubs. And this, from Alex on Instagram, this question goes to that point. Is it surprising that more clubs aren't looking at Ajax forward Brian Brobbey? I know he's out of form, but I can't help but feel that there's a player in there.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about career choices, Brobbey's biggest error was making the move to Leipzig in the first place. And you can completely understand why he took it, because, as David said, it's got that reputation as a European football finishing school for young players. Didn't work out for him, had to go back to Ajax. And really, that's affected his career long term in quite a bad way, I think, because it's not as if he's not been good since he's come back to Ajax. He's had some really good moments, even though, as Alex says, this season has been tougher. But of course, he was a player produced by the Ajax Academy that they then had to pay a lot to get back. And that creates really an expectation that maybe there wasn't before. So I think that's quite hard for him. I think as well, with the way that Francesco Farioli, who I know David's a big fan of, has wanted them to play this season, I think it's maybe shown up some of Brobbey's technical shortcomings. And I have to say, some of the criticism of him on Dutch television by some of the pundits has been unnecessarily harsh and personal about him this season, criticising his technical level. And he has found it hard. I think he's found it hard as Ajax's standards have risen. And maybe he hasn't quite managed to go with that. Obviously, I think there's been the fact that he's not reacted that well to them signing Wout Weghorst and having him breathing down his neck. It's felt that rather than thriving on the pressure, he's allowed it to buckle him a little bit. But I agree with Alex. I think there's a player in there. I think when you look at the amount of Premier League clubs that could do with a short-term striker, it feels like worth a loan punt at the very least, because he's strong, he's got pace. I guess the question is, do you want a player in January who needs to play himself into form?
That's the thing. I don't think... I'm watching Brian in a lot of youth football, both for when he was at Ajax and when he was at the Netherlands as well. He was in a really good young Dutch team. I think Kenneth Taylor was in there as well, who was at Ajax, really nice midfielder.
Maybe their next big sale.
Yeah, I think so as well. And Taylor and Brobbey always stood out to me. But sometimes you can catch players when they're very, very young and what you can see in them. And I was watching Taylor, and the first thing you look at him when you see it, that's the sort of player who's just got a really long career ahead of him. His IQ and awareness and intelligence on the field, you could say, okay, might be a future captain there, somebody who's going to have a very good, good professional career. And I was watching Brobbey and how he was playing, and I get the feeling now he hasn't progressed much from when he was maybe 17 or 18. Now, he's had a couple of interesting moves. I think he might perhaps been ill-advised. It always surprised. There was a lot of furore when he first left Ajax over his contract as well, and he made that move. Obviously, he could have looked at the Red Bull school, as it were, as maybe the ideal development for him. I thought, and then now with hindsight, looking back, maybe it would have been better for him to stay at Ajax and just to dig in there. Do wonder how he's been advised, and this is the problem, that I haven't seen much development in his game, because he clearly hasn't played enough, he hasn't settled enough. It's also what type of player he is as well. I keep seeing people saying, he's a bit of a winger, he's not just a centre forward. I don't know, I see his game and his qualities as just a pure 9, really. And people were using him out wide, saying he can play out wide and stuff. And I didn't really. He was even linked with Man United for a bit. I think when they were talking when Ten Hag was there, he was strongly linked. And I was thinking, my word, he's nowhere near capable of coming into the Premier League, and let alone a Man United team that was in permanent crisis, as it were. So he needs to find somewhere where you can call a home, and he knows he can play regularly, and that is absolutely sure. And yes, I do agree with both Andy and Alex that there is a player there.
Yeah, talking of home from home, AC Milan is what I'm thinking about, and Inter Milan, but we'll get to that in a moment, because Harry's email here is, I'm going to my first Italian football match, AC or Milan versus Parma at the end of the month with a couple of mates, and I can't wait. But what are the essential things we need to do to make it an authentic Milan football experience? I'd have thought the authentic thing is make sure that it's Milan playing there, not Inter.
So starting controversially, I like that. I think you've got to enjoy the full around stadium experience rather than just in stadium experience. I think that's really important, Harry. So turn up early. Yeah. Firstly, because at any Serie A game, if you don't want to miss the beginning, you're going to have to turn up early. You will get your ID checked at least once on the way into the stadium. But there's plenty outside the stadium. So there's food. What in Italy they call pubs, but they're basically massive food trucks that sell grilled food and drinks. I think to get yourself some sort of steak sandwich is a bit of a must, obviously, unless you're a vegetarian or vegan. But there's loads of other options as well. Some sort of hearty fare. Also, it's outside Italian football stadiums, and San Siro is as good as it gets for this. There's an incredible variety of football knockoff. So you need to get yourself some sort of, I guess they would call them like replica shirt of one team. Who knows, if you're feeling daring like Dotun, get yourself an original Ronaldo into one.
Well,
and pop that under your jumper. But obviously get one with a Milan legend as well. There are so many different options. You get there early, you'll not only get there and savour the atmosphere and get into your seat in time before the game starts, but there's plenty to do outside the stadium.
And when you say early, how much earlier?
Like 3 hours before kickoff.
3 hours before kickoff?
Yeah, seriously, get moved. There's a great place, for my recommendations, there's a great place called Barretto 1957. So I would go there. It's kind of a bar/pub/grill, as Andy said. You can get a lot of stodge there. You can get a couple of cheap beers, and all the fans flock there, and everybody who's going to the game flocks there. And I think it's perfect to start with. So that's Barretto 1957. You got a lovely view of the San Siro as well out the front.
Deborah, it's in my diary.
Either that, I'll get invited round to
1957
Marouane Wander's apartment that overlooks it.
I knew you were going to say that.
I'm presuming it's on the market now.
Yeah.
Maybe you can Airbnb it, Harry. Have a look.
Good advice from both of you, and thank you. And thank you for listening to Ask OTC. Now, if you'd like to ask a question, you can contact us at any time at Radio Dotun, at Andy Brassel, at David Jacka, or at OTC Pod. And you can email us otc@footballramble.com.